The day I was laid off from Blue Horizon Technologies after 20 years, I had no idea how much it would change my life. It all happened so quickly. One moment, I was the vice president of operations, overseeing global initiatives and leading a team that spanned 10 countries. The next, I was handed a manila envelope and told that my entire division was being shut down, outsourced to a company in Mexico. I wasn't prepared for it, even though I knew layoffs were coming. In my gut, I always felt the restructuring was inevitable, but I never imagined it would hit me so hard. I walked out of the office with nothing but a cardboard box of personal items, some framed photos, a coffee mug, and a paperweight that my team had given me years ago. That was it. 20 years of hard work, of late nights, and constant travel, all reduced to a single box. I didn't know how to feel. I thought I'd be angry or sad, maybe even relieved. But instead, I just felt numb. The first thing I did when I got home was sit on the couch, staring at the TV, waiting for Sarah to come home. I wasn't sure how to tell her. How do you tell the person you love that everything you've worked for is gone? I had no plan. There was no roadmap for how to handle something like this, especially when the person you thought you could rely on most is about to walk through that door. Sarah came in around 7 p.m., her heels clicking on the hardwood floor as she walked past me without even acknowledging my presence. She had just finished a meeting with her startup partners. As she put her bag down, I could already tell something was off. She was in that detached, business-focused mode she'd been in more often lately. "What's up?" she asked, her eyes flicking to me for a brief moment before going back to her phone. She was already thinking about the next thing, already mentally moved on from the moment we were in. I sat up, my heart pounding in my chest. "I got laid off today," I said, the words sounding foreign coming out of my mouth. "They're shutting down the whole division." She didn't react right away. She didn't say anything, didn't even ask if I was okay or if I needed anything. Instead, she glanced up at me, her expression unreadable. "So what now?" she asked flatly, her attention already back on her phone. I was stunned. That was all she had to say? A question, but no concern, no empathy, no comfort. In that moment, I realized something I had been avoiding for months. Sarah hadn't been the woman I thought she was. She wasn't the woman I fell in love with at that tech conference in 2012, the one who laughed at my terrible jokes and made me feel like the smartest guy in the room. This wasn't the woman who had supported me through all the late nights and early mornings when I was building my career. This was someone different. Someone who saw me as an asset that could be discarded when it no longer served her. I swallowed hard, feeling a wave of disappointment crash over me. "I'll figure it out," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I didn't know what was going to happen next, but I knew I wasn't going to let her see me fall apart. She didn't even look up from her phone. "Yeah, well, we have bills to pay. The rent, utilities, everything. I hope you've got a plan," she said, her voice cold and sharp. The words cut deep. It wasn't just the situation. It was the way she was treating me. I had always been the one to support her and her dreams, to help her get her tech consultancy off the ground. But now it felt like none of that mattered. I was nothing more than a burden, someone who was getting in the way of her future. I sat there, feeling the weight of her words sink in. And that's when I realized I had been nothing more than a stepping stone for her. All those years of building a life together, and I had missed the signs. She was no longer my partner. She was my competitor. And I had been too blind to see it until now. The life we had built together, our home, our relationship, felt like it was all falling apart. That night, Sarah went out with her business partners, as she often did now. They were meeting to discuss the next phase of her startup's expansion. The irony wasn't lost on me. While I sat at home, trying to process the shock of losing my job, she was out celebrating her success, her world moving forward, while mine seemed to be falling apart. As I sat in our quiet apartment, the walls felt like they were closing in on me. I couldn't even bring myself to pack up the box of things from the office. It felt pointless. I had no idea where my life was headed. I tried calling my brother Jake, but he didn't pick up. It wasn't that I needed advice or even comfort. I just needed someone to talk to. So I sat there, watching the minutes tick by on the clock, the weight of the silence almost unbearable. The only sound was the hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen and the occasional traffic noise outside. When Sarah came back, it was nearly midnight. I heard her heels click on the floor as she walked in, and then the door slammed behind her. She was talking on the phone, probably with one of her investors. She had a way of talking to people like they were more important than anyone else in the room. It was one of the things I had once admired about her, the drive, the ambition. But now it felt like a sharp contrast to the empty feeling growing inside me. I wanted to tell her everything, the truth about my severance, about the condo, about how much I had. But something held me back. Maybe it was because I still wasn't sure where things stood between us, or maybe it was because I wanted to see how she would react if she thought I had nothing left. "Greg, are you still up?" She called from the hallway, her voice strained, like she was half listening to me and half listening to the conversation on the phone. "Yeah," I replied. "I'm just thinking." She entered the living room, her eyes scanning the room before landing on me. "So, you got laid off today, huh?" she said, her tone flat, distant. She seemed to be expecting more of a reaction from me, but I couldn't give her the satisfaction. I had already processed the news. I just hadn't figured out how to process her. I nodded, trying to keep my voice steady. "Yeah, they eliminated the division. I'm out." She paused for a moment, then let out a heavy sigh. "Great," she said, almost too casually. "So now what? You need to find another job or something?" I stared at her, taken aback by the indifference in her voice. She wasn't worried about me or our future together. It wasn't even the money. It was the way she was acting like I was a burden on her life. My heart sank further as I realized how little she actually cared about what I was going through. She was already looking past me, to her own success and her own future. I swallowed hard, my throat dry. "I'll figure it out. I've got a severance package. I'll be fine." "Severance?" she repeated, her eyebrows raising just slightly. "What's that? A few months of salary or something?" "Something like that?" I muttered, my thoughts scattered. I didn't want to tell her the full truth. I wasn't ready to reveal how much I had, or maybe I didn't want her to think I was flaunting it. But the more I looked at her, the more I realized how shallow her concern was. "I just don't know how we're going to make this work, Greg," she said, her voice rising, the edges of frustration creeping in. "This apartment isn't cheap. The rent, the utilities, the lifestyle we're used to, it all costs money. I can't do this on my own." I flinched at her words, though I knew they were coming. The weight of the situation hit me all at once, and I finally spoke up, my voice a little louder than I meant it to be. "I've been supporting you, Sarah. I've been helping you grow your business, co-signing leases, putting in late nights so you could chase your dreams. And now that I've lost my job, I'm the problem." She looked at me for a moment, and I saw something shift in her eyes, a flicker of annoyance, maybe even guilt. But it passed quickly, replaced by the all-too-familiar look of indifference. "I'm just saying, Greg, you've been a pretty lousy partner these last few months. You're never around. You never take initiative with anything. All you do is sit behind a desk and expect the world to work for you. And now, when everything's on the line, you're not even able to provide." The words hit harder than I expected, like a punch to the gut. I stood up, suddenly feeling a wave of anger rise inside me. This wasn't the woman I had married, the woman I had supported for all those years. This was someone who had become consumed by her own success. Someone who saw me as an accessory to her dreams rather than a partner. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to calm down. "I'm not your problem, Sarah," I said, my voice steady now, but my heart racing. "You don't get to treat me like this, like I'm just a convenience for you." She looked at me, her expression unchanged. "You're right. Maybe I don't need you anymore." And in that moment, I realized she had been planning this all along. The way she had started pulling away, focusing more on her business than on us. The way she had stopped asking about my day and stopped supporting me like she used to. She had been preparing to move on long before I lost my job, and I was nothing but an obstacle in her way. The following days were a blur. After that night, Sarah stayed distant, barely speaking to me except for the occasional passing comment about the bills or her business. She was gone more often than not, busy with her investors or meetings with potential clients. And when she was home, the tension between us was palpable, It felt like I was living with a stranger. Each time she walked in the door, I braced myself, knowing that the next exchange would be another reminder of how little she cared about what I was going through. It was like I was invisible to her, nothing more than a temporary inconvenience. I spent my days trying to find a new job, but the more I looked, the more it felt like a losing battle. I knew I couldn't just jump into another role at a company like Blue Horizon. My severance package was enough for me to take a breather, but I needed something meaningful to fill the void. The reality of being 42, unemployed, and unsure of my next steps was more than I could handle. Every rejection email or silent phone call from a recruiter made me feel like I was slipping further into a hole I couldn't climb out of. And yet, Sarah was still out there, thriving in her own world, more successful than ever. I knew she didn't care that I was struggling. She was too focused on her next deal, her next big step. The turning point came on a Thursday afternoon when Sarah finally sat me down, her arms crossed and her eyes focused on me like she was preparing for a battle. I had been sitting on the couch, mindlessly scrolling through job listings when she appeared in front of me, her face devoid of emotion. "We need to talk," she said. Her voice wasn't kind, it wasn't understanding, it was flat, almost rehearsed. I put my phone down, suddenly aware that something serious was coming. "About what?" "About us," she replied, her tone sharp. "I can't keep pretending everything is fine when it's not. You've lost your job, and I don't know if I can keep supporting you like this. You're not the same person anymore, Greg." I was stunned. I had known things were off, but hearing her say it out loud was a blow I wasn't prepared for. "I lost my job, Sarah. That's it. I'm still the same person. I'm still here. I'm still trying." "Trying?" she scoffed. "I don't see you trying. I see you moping around the house, wasting time, acting like this is just some bump in the road. Well, it's not. This is real. We're not going to just get by on your severance and some half-hearted efforts." Her words stung, each one a reminder of how little I meant to her now. It was like she was talking about a stranger, not the person she once shared a life with. "I'm still figuring it out, Sarah. I don't have all the answers. But I don't need you to tear me down while I do it." She threw her hands up in frustration. "I'm not tearing you down, Greg. I'm just telling you the truth. This relationship, this life we built, it's all at risk. I can't keep going like this." For the first time in weeks, I felt a surge of clarity. In that moment, it wasn't about the job, the severance, or any of the material things. It was about the fact that Sarah wasn't the person I thought she was. She had made it clear that she didn't see me as a partner anymore. She saw me as a liability. It wasn't just the job loss that was breaking us. It was the way she had been treating me for months, the way she had been slowly eroding the foundation of our relationship with every dismissive comment and every selfish action. I stood up, feeling a rush of emotion I hadn't let myself feel before. "I don't need your approval, Sarah," I said, my voice stronger than I expected. "I don't need you to validate my worth. I've been busting my ass for you, for us, for years. And if you think I'm some burden now, then maybe this isn't working anymore." Her face went pale, her lips pressed tightly together. She didn't say anything for a long time, just stood there, her eyes flicking to the door and then back to me. And for the first time in a long while, I didn't feel like I was the one who needed to prove something. I realized that this wasn't just about losing my job, it was about losing her. I wasn't the one who had changed. She had. I turned to walk away, my heart pounding in my chest. "I'm done here, Sarah," I said, the finality of it sinking in. "I'm not your problem. I'm not your punching bag. I'm done being treated like I'm less than." I grabbed my jacket, the weight of the decision heavy on my shoulders, but also strangely liberating. I wasn't going to let her keep me small, keep me trapped in a life that didn't respect me. It was time to move on, to start fresh, even if I didn't know exactly where that would lead. I walked out of the apartment, leaving behind everything I thought I knew about love, success, and partnership. As I closed the door behind me, I felt like a new chapter was beginning, one where I would finally define my own worth. And for the first time in a long time, I felt free. I spent the next few days at my brother Jake's place in Austin, trying to come to terms with everything that had happened. The silence of the apartment, the echo of Sarah's last words, followed me like a shadow. I knew I had made the right decision, but it didn't stop the heaviness that settled in my chest. The sudden end of my relationship, the job loss, the uncertainty of what came next. It was a lot to process. But at least I had a roof over my head, and I wasn't trying to convince myself that the life I had been living was worth salvaging. Jake was supportive, as always. He didn't ask many questions. He knew how to let me work through things at my own pace. The first day at his place was spent in silence. I didn't turn on the TV or check my phone. I didn't want to see any more rejection emails or well-meaning but shallow messages from friends. I just needed a break from it all. I had spent years burying myself in work and relationships that weren't meant to last. Now, with everything in pieces, I realized I had no idea what I wanted or who I even was outside of all that. By the third day, Jake noticed I wasn't getting any work done. I had been thinking about what came next, but not taking any action. He threw a beer in my hand, sat me down, and said, "You need to stop feeling sorry for yourself, Greg. You've got a chance to build something new here. Don't waste it." It was the kick in the ass I needed. He was right. I couldn't keep sulking in my brother's basement forever, waiting for some grand revelation about the future. It was time to get serious, to figure out how to rebuild my life on my terms, not based on what Sarah had expected of me or what Blue Horizon had demanded. The first step was figuring out my finances. I called my lawyer the next morning. The divorce papers were already in motion, but there was a lot more to consider, mainly the assets I hadn't yet told Sarah about. The severance package, the condo, the stock options, none of that was public knowledge. As far as she knew, I was broke and unemployed. I had let her think that for the time being, and it felt oddly liberating to know that I still had control over something. My lawyer, Carol, was pragmatic as always. "You're not in a bad position, Greg," she said over the phone. "But you're going to need to stay smart here. You have leverage, and you're going to need it. You don't want to be completely transparent just yet. Let her make the first move, and you decide how much to reveal." I didn't want to get petty or vindictive, but I couldn't deny the satisfaction that came from knowing Sarah had no clue what was really waiting in my bank accounts. I had earned that severance, those stock options, that condo. I had built everything, just like I had built my career. And now I wasn't going to let anyone, especially Sarah, take it all away from me. In the meantime, I also started to focus on something positive, something to fill the void left by Sarah. I needed to rebuild not just my career, but my sense of self. It wasn't going to happen overnight, but I needed to start somewhere. A few days after I had settled in, I reached out to a few former colleagues who had left Blue Horizon, trying to gauge the job market. I didn't want to go back to corporate life. That world felt like a trap now, but I knew I had skills, connections, and experience. I had helped build a global business from the ground up. There had to be something out there that would allow me to leverage that without going back to the grind of long hours and endless meetings. The calls went well. One former colleague had moved to a tech consulting firm and was looking for someone with my background. It wasn't a done deal yet, but it was something. I felt a sense of purpose stir in me, the first real spark since I had been let go. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I was moving forward. I also started working on a side project, something I had always wanted to do but had never found the time for. A nonprofit that would help men going through tough times like I was, facing divorce, career upheaval, the emotional fallout from relationships that weren't working. I wanted to offer a safe space for men to talk, to share their experiences, and to help each other rebuild their lives. It felt right, and it felt good. I didn't need to be a corporate executive to make a difference. I could create something that mattered, on my terms. As I spent more time on this new venture, I found myself becoming more grounded. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was thriving in a new way. I wasn't defined by a job title or a relationship. I was finally learning to define myself. And when the divorce papers arrived, with Sarah's lawyer's name on the top, I felt a wave of calm wash over me. I wasn't afraid of losing anything anymore. I had already lost it all, and I had survived. Now it was my turn to rebuild, to show the world, and most importantly myself, that I didn't need anyone's approval to succeed. I was ready to face whatever came next. The weeks following my decision to leave Sarah were a blur of emotions and small victories. I wasn't sure what I expected, but I certainly wasn't prepared for how quickly the reality of my situation would sink in. I had spent years wrapped up in a life that wasn't really mine, caught up in the idea of success, the weight of being the reliable one, the one everyone turned to. Losing everything, my job, my relationship, my sense of purpose, was terrifying. But somehow, it was also freeing. By the time the divorce papers officially came through, I had begun to reclaim my life. I wasn't the man who had walked out of that apartment with nothing left. I had a plan, a purpose, and most importantly, I had control. The nonprofit was moving forward, albeit slowly, but it was something I could pour my energy into. And the consulting opportunity with the tech firm? It was still on the table, though not finalized yet. The potential was there, and that was enough to keep me focused. Jake kept pushing me to get out more, to start meeting new people, to stop isolating myself. It wasn't easy. Everything in me wanted to hole up in the safety of his basement, away from the world that had become so unpredictable. But Jake was relentless. He wanted me to start living again, not just existing. So I started taking small steps. I met with a few people from the old tech community, went to coffee with some of my former colleagues, and slowly I began to feel the weight of the past few months start to lift. It wasn't about forgetting what had happened, but about building a future that was mine. One Saturday, about a month after everything had fallen apart, I took a walk along the river near Jake's place. It was the first time I'd felt truly at peace in a long time. The crisp air, the sound of the water rushing by, the quiet of the morning, it felt like a reset, like I was finding my center again. I'd gotten so caught up in the storm of everything that I forgot how to simply breathe. That's when I received a call that would change the course of everything. It was from the tech consulting firm I'd been in talks with. They wanted me to start as soon as possible. They were offering me a flexible contract, one that would allow me to contribute my expertise without being tied down to a full-time corporate schedule. It wasn't the same as working 60-hour weeks, but it was enough to make me realize I was capable of moving on from the life I had built with Blue Horizon. I didn't tell Sarah about the job offer. It wasn't out of spite, but because I had learned that I didn't need her validation anymore. For years, I had based my worth on her approval, on the idea of what she thought I should be. But now, I had learned to listen to myself. I wasn't going to let her or anyone else define my success or happiness. I wasn't going to let her control the narrative of my life anymore. The real turning point came when Sarah reached out, a few weeks after the papers were filed. Her lawyer had been in touch with mine, and she was asking for a meeting to discuss the settlement. I wasn't sure what she wanted, whether it was to come to some sort of agreement or to try and reconcile. But when I walked into that meeting, it was clear she wasn't looking for a reconciliation. She was there to stake her claim. She sat across from me in a sleek, tailored suit, her usual confidence radiating from her. But there was something different about her, an edge to her that I couldn't quite place. "I want what's mine," she said, her tone cold. "I want the house, and I want the business. You've had your chance. Now it's my turn." It was the same Sarah I had known, but also someone who had changed completely. She wasn't interested in the partnership we once had, the life we had built together. She wasn't asking for fairness or understanding. She was demanding control. I looked at her, feeling nothing but a cold clarity. This was no longer about her. It was about me. "I'm not interested in your terms, Sarah," I said, my voice steady. "I've given you everything you wanted, but I'm not going to keep fighting for something that isn't working. The house, the business, it's all part of what we built, but it's not mine to give away anymore." Her eyes narrowed, and I could see the frustration building behind her calm exterior. "You think you can just walk away from all of this and leave me with nothing?" "I think I've already given you everything," I replied. "But now I'm going to build something new. For me. And if you can't see that, then that's your problem, not mine." There was a silence between us, thick with tension. But in that moment, I realized something. I wasn't afraid of her anymore. I wasn't afraid of the future. For the first time, I felt like I had control over my own life. I didn't need her approval. I didn't need the life I thought I was supposed to have. I just needed to keep moving forward. And whatever came next, I was ready for it. I walked out of that meeting feeling lighter than I had in months. I didn't know what the next step would be, but I knew it didn't matter. I wasn't living for anyone else anymore. I was living for myself. And that was more than enough. The weeks after that meeting with Sarah were a strange mix of reflection and progress. I had finally come to terms with what had happened, but the healing wasn't as simple as I thought it would be. It wasn't about just moving on. It was about rediscovering who I was without the shadow of Sarah and the life we had built hanging over me. I was still processing the anger, the betrayal, the sense of loss, but I was also realizing that all of those things had shaped me into someone stronger, more self-aware, and far more capable than I had been before. I spent most of my days working on the nonprofit project. What had started as an idea, something I thought about doing someday, was beginning to take form. I found myself pouring hours into it, talking to men who had been through similar experiences, helping them navigate the pain of loss, divorce, and the identity crisis that often came with it. The more I worked on it, the more it felt like I was giving myself a chance to heal by helping others do the same. It wasn't a quick fix, but it was something real, something meaningful. I started seeing this as my new mission, my new purpose. I didn't need to climb corporate ladders or chase after validation anymore. This was what mattered now, building something that could make a difference. The tech consulting gig also began to take shape. It wasn't the big corporate role I once held, but it paid well and gave me the flexibility I needed. It allowed me to be involved in projects that interested me without the pressure and the grind I had grown so accustomed to. It felt like a new beginning, less about proving myself and more about choosing where I wanted to focus my energy. I didn't have to be locked into a rigid schedule or endless meetings. I could finally breathe. One afternoon, after finishing a call with a potential client for the nonprofit, I decided to visit the Malibu beach house for the first time since everything had changed. It had always felt like just another asset, something that came with the severance, something I could sell or rent out if I needed to. But now, it was mine in a way that felt different. I didn't need it for the money. I didn't need it for the status. I needed it for me. I needed to find peace in a place that had once symbolized my success. I didn't expect it to change everything, but I hoped it might help me understand what I wanted moving forward. When I arrived, the house was exactly as I remembered it. Stunning. Right on the edge of the beach, the sound of the waves crashing just outside the door. But something had shifted. It felt like it could be home, not a symbol of everything I had lost, but a space where I could build something new. I walked through the house, taking in the quiet. I could picture myself here more often, working, reflecting, living. I stood at the large windows, watching the waves, and realized I had come a long way since that first night when I left Sarah. I had given up a life I thought was perfect, only to realize that it wasn't mine at all. And now I was starting to build something that felt more authentic, more in line with who I was. That evening, I sat on the deck, watching the sun set over the horizon, and I felt a calm I hadn't known in months. The world still felt chaotic, and I still wasn't sure what the future held, but I wasn't scared anymore. I wasn't waiting for anyone's approval or validation. I had stopped trying to fit into the life Sarah and I had envisioned together. Now, I was creating my own. The next morning, I drove back to Jake's place, feeling like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. The house, the work, the nonprofit, it was all falling into place. I wasn't looking for a grand revelation anymore. I was just moving forward. And the more I let go of the past, the more I realized that I had everything I needed to be happy. I didn't need Sarah. I didn't need a big corporate title. And I didn't need to prove myself to anyone. I had everything I needed within me. A few days later, I met up with a former colleague who had heard about my new venture. He was impressed by what I was doing and wanted to help. We spent hours talking about possibilities, about how the nonprofit could grow, and how it could become a larger platform for helping men navigate major life changes. It was the first time I felt like something big was actually coming together, and for the first time in a long time, I felt truly excited about the future. I wasn't sure where this new path would lead, But I didn't need to know. I had found something worth pursuing, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was exactly where I needed to be. I wasn't looking back anymore. The past was behind me, and I was finally free. A few months had passed since I first stepped foot into the Malibu beach house, and things were beginning to settle in ways I never expected. The tech consulting gig was going well, bringing in a steady stream of income. But more than that, it was allowing me to reclaim my confidence and sense of purpose. I wasn't tied down by endless corporate demands anymore. Instead, I had the flexibility to choose my projects and spend more time on the nonprofit I had started, helping men navigate the emotional aftermath of divorce, job loss, and other life-altering changes. It felt good to be part of something meaningful, something that was about more than just money or success. I spent the next few months working from the beach house, using it as a base for my work. The view, the peaceful sounds of the ocean, the quiet, it was everything I needed to stay focused and motivated. I began to feel like I had found my rhythm, something I hadn't felt in years. It wasn't just about survival anymore. I was actually building something with intention, with heart. The people I was helping through the nonprofit were giving me as much, if not more, than I was giving them. Every conversation, every breakthrough made me feel more grounded, more connected to the version of myself that had been buried for so long under the weight of corporate pressure and an unhealthy relationship. One morning, as I sat in the sunroom, sipping my coffee and staring out at the Pacific, I got a call that I had been expecting but wasn't quite prepared for. It was from my lawyer. Sarah's lawyer had reached out again, requesting a settlement meeting. The divorce had been dragging on for months, and while things had initially seemed like they were moving toward a quick resolution, Sarah had made a few last-ditch efforts to gain more from the marriage. I had been waiting for this. I knew that after seeing how things were going for me, how much I was moving on, how much I had built, she would try to claw back whatever she could. As I listened to my lawyer explain the situation, I realized that, in many ways, I had been holding my breath. The divorce wasn't just about the assets. It was about power, control, and who got to dictate the next chapter of our lives. Sarah had always seen herself as the one who was in control, the one who made the rules, and I had spent too many years letting her. But that was over now. I wasn't going to let her rewrite my future. When the meeting was scheduled, I felt a strange calm wash over me. I wasn't nervous or anxious. I was ready. Ready to face her, ready to finalize everything and move on with my life. For the first time in a long time, I realized I wasn't seeking her approval. I didn't need her to acknowledge the things I had accomplished or the life I was now building. I was doing just fine on my own. The day of the settlement meeting, I walked into the conference room with a sense of clarity that surprised me. Sarah was already there, her lawyer beside her. She looked as polished as ever, dressed in a sharp suit, her face carefully neutral. But I could see the tension in her shoulders, the way she fidgeted with her pen. It was like she was trying to control the narrative, trying to keep up the illusion of control that she had held onto for so long. When the lawyer began discussing the terms, I didn't interrupt. I listened quietly, letting them outline their demands, more than I had agreed to previously. Sarah's lawyer even suggested that I give up my stake in the Malibu beach house. But as I listened, I couldn't help but feel a sense of detachment. I wasn't invested in this anymore. The battle, the power struggle, it didn't matter. It wasn't my life anymore. I had already moved on. When it was my turn to speak, I stood up, feeling calm and composed. "I'm not here to negotiate any further," I said firmly. "I've already given everything I can. The assets, the money, everything I've worked for has been laid out. What's left to discuss is the future, and I'm not interested in going backwards." The silence in the room was palpable. Sarah's eyes flashed with frustration, but she didn't say anything. Her lawyer cleared his throat, trying to regain control of the conversation, but I wasn't having it. "I'm not going to keep going around in circles," I continued. "This ends today. The assets have been divided, and I'm done. I'm not here for a fight. I've moved on. It's time for you to do the same." Sarah looked at me, and for a brief moment, I saw something in her eyes, a flicker of the woman I once knew, the woman I thought I could build a life with. but it quickly disappeared, replaced by the cold, calculating mask she had adopted in recent years. "Fine," she said, her voice tight, "but you'll regret this." I shook my head, feeling a sense of finality wash over me. "No, I won't. I've been through the worst of it, and I'm still standing. I'll be fine, Sarah, and so will you." And just like that, the meeting ended. The divorce was finalized shortly after, and I walked out of that room with a weight lifted off my shoulders. It wasn't just about the assets or the house. It was about reclaiming my power, my future. I wasn't running from the past anymore. I was moving forward, finally free from the chains that had held me back for so long. That evening, I went back to the beach house, sitting on the deck and watching the sunset. For the first time in months, I felt at peace. The future was mine to shape, and for the first time, I felt like I was on the right path. There was no looking back, only forward, and I was ready for whatever came next.